I'd like to welcome Catherine Rowe of Catherine Rowe Designs here to ARU today to talk to you during Discover Creative Careers. As I say, if you do have any questions for Catherine, do pop them in the chat and I can ask Catherine them as we go along, or you can pop them in the chat and I'll come to them right at the end. So, Catherine, you run your own successful design company, which is amazing. So it'd be really great to talk to you a little bit about how you got to where you are today. So were you creative as a child?
Yes, very much so. Always drawing and kind of very much automatically knew that hopefully, you know, I would pursue something in art. So yeah, I think on my Instagram somewhere there was a 10-year challenge and you're meant to do it for your face, but I did it for a drawing of a leopard I did when I was little, and a really similar leopard that I had done quite recently. So yeah, always drawing, loved it when I was little.
Right, and have you kept a lot of your drawings and things like that?
We had this, my mum and I had this conversation the other day, and she was like, they're somewhere. So I'm determined she's going to dig some out, but there is the odd thing around that's kind of framed. And funnily enough, that leopard in particular, I just remember my mum loved it. She has got that framed, but yeah, sure there's some haunting the attic somewhere.
So did you take like art as an option at GCSE, or
yeah, I did
subject-wise?
I did art design and I did photography and did graphic design, and at that time I wasn't sure whether I kind of wanted to go down more of the graphic design or fine art route, and I wasn't even really sure. It wasn't until I got to sort of foundation level, which then, you know, I explored illustration more specifically, but it was, yeah, primarily for me it was just about mark making and drawing, and art and design was definitely by far my most enjoyable subject out of those three for GCSE.
So you did all three of those subjects at GCSE?
Wow,
that's amazing. Okay, cool. So then you went to do a foundation year?
Yes.
And was there a specific thing that made you focus on illustration at that point, a particular experience, or?
Unfortunately they don't do it anymore, but I went to Portsmouth Uni. They don't have the foundation course there anymore, but it was just very kind of good, you know, intuitive. It's very much like throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, and you know, we explored kind of everything. And yeah, the illustration module that must have been foundation. We did a animal, the collective noun for animals, and I remember, so that sort of with the kind of, you know, situation of having a brief, and then being able to just, you know, do it however you wanted to do it. That was the one that I was super passionate about, kind of liked a bit of animation, dabbled in that, did, you know, of course I don't know what they're like now, foundations, but we were doing like fashion, and there was so much, but
everything, yeah.
Really, the illustration module really, yeah, stuck for me.
Okay, and at this point, were you thinking, oh, but what will I do in the future with this? Or were you just kind of going with the flow and with your passion?
Yeah, I was very lucky that I wasn't being steered in any particular direction at home. So, you know, my love of art was embraced. My elder sister also, who's 5 years older, so she would have finished uni. She did illustration at Falmouth, so she'd kind of set the way for, you know, that kind of thing. And then I have another sister who, she didn't do art, but she was arty. So our whole family was kind of arty, and yeah, I was really lucky that both my parents embraced it, and I think they recognised as well that just, you know, at that time it's quite a difficult, it's a big decision to make, you know, what you're going to go on to do, whether what you do at uni means, you know, automatically that's what your career is going to be. And I think I kind of just wanted to do what I liked at the time, and my parents were happy with that. So it was more about just enjoying what I was studying. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I'm glad you raised that, because obviously in my job I talk to a lot of students, and I've literally met students before and they've said, oh, I want to do biomedical sciences or illustration. And I've sort of been like, what?
Wow.
And by the time I kind of talk to them, they're like, yeah, no, actually, I really want to do illustration. And you can see that that's like where the passion is. But I think also, you know, young people get advice about the types of jobs that they will do, and I think it's really difficult. But one of the things that we have is that jobs are changing all the time, and actually quite a lot of the jobs that young people today will be doing in the future don't even exist yet. So it's kind of like, how can you prepare for a career that doesn't exist?
Absolutely.
So so at what point did you decide that illustration was definitely for you, and that was the point that you were going to go to university? Was that at the point you were doing that project, you were like, okay, next step, university illustration?
Yeah, I think so. And I kind of knew I wanted to go to university, and full disclosure, I just wanted to move out. I wanted to move out of home. I wanted to get going and kind of get my independence. But if I could do it whilst doing something I'm passionate about, I never really considered. And again, because I think both my sisters kind of went to uni, and we're so lucky that it's so accessible for us here, and it's very easy to kind of get loans and that kind of thing. I know it's all a bit different and way more expensive now, but it was just kind of, that's the next step. I really like illustration, and we had the tutors. I mean, I still see some of them because some of them are local. The tutors on that course were amazing, and there was one lady in particular who was like, really pushed you. Really, she's like, I think I did something with cats, and she was like, you've definitely got it, but you've just got to keep going, keep drawing, keep redrawing like this subject. And she like really threw me into it. So I kind of, that was the first time I felt really like, oh, I could actually, this could be something rather than just, this is what I enjoy doing, I like drawing, like this could be something that I do for a living. So that was
I think that's key as well. You just talked about having teachers who are passionate about what they do, because that's the thing, isn't it? They understand the love for it. That's why they do what they do. So if they can support people to also follow it as a passion themselves, then they will definitely do that. So you went to ARU to do your illustration degree. Do you want to tell us a bit about your time there, and in particular, I mean, we've chatted before, you told me about how you found the model that you work with now whilst in Cambridge. That's really interesting.
And so when I was actually still on my A levels when I found out about ARU, because my teacher then, when I was doing my art A level, said, because I got really into printmaking, and we didn't have the facilities there, but we did it on like perspex with, you etch in and did the ink rather than like proper plates and things. And he said, the Cambridge School of Art in Anglia Ruskin in Cambridge has an amazing print making facility. So I just off the back of that, that's why I booked my open day and went there, and obviously loved Cambridge. And I was really lucky to get an unconditional offer, had an interview with Chris, and I remember exactly what I showed him. And it was a project I had done on my foundation course of these birds, because like if you've seen my work, it's all wildlife. And so yeah, I was really excited about that. And so it was the 3 years. I mean, again, so young when you go, it's a crazy sort of concept to think I'm putting everything into this really small amount of time to possibly shape my future, but again, it was kind of, I've moved out, I've got to uni, I'm having a great time, so you meet so many new people, but also was just kind of been thrown in this really intense working so much. Doing it like first year, I remember I worked so hard, and it annoyingly, like, I think I don't know if it's different now, the grades didn't count, and I just discovered this print room. I remember I still actually was going through some work, and I found my I'll get them out later, my something I did in first year in the print room with one of the tutors for the illustration course. And so very kind of intense ups and downs, in terms of, this is amazing, I love it, I'm going to be an illustrator, then thinking I found something I loved, then like that's actually not working, or you've got to be, I loved a bit of watercolor, but I basically wasn't like, I just kind of liked it, wasn't good enough. But what happened in second year, I was doing a bit at loose end, everyone wants to try and have a signature style, and there's people with really strong ways of working, like and signatures, which I felt really I was missing. And basically I went to an arts and crafts market in Cambridge. I don't know if they still do it. I think it was by like the Round Church. I can't remember exactly, but
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like it's a little like market. And really sadly, she's passed away now. She was fairly young, but she used scraper board, and it's a material. I've got something to show you in a bit. That's it's like card with clay and then ink, and you scratch away the ink to reveal the white. And most people remember it from when you're little, and it's got like an outline of a cat or a lion or something, and it might have foil underneath. So, and I just loved it because it kind of emulates printmaking. It emulates like an etching, but without the messy process. Because I wasn't very good at I've never been very good with wet media, like just not very clean and tidy and just getting it everywhere. So that's how I discovered it. And I remember the tutors being really excited, they loved it, and it was perfect timing because it's just as I was going into my final major project. So and that was, I remember feeling like, oh, I can. And I remember thinking at times like, oh, do I even want to keep going? I don't know if I can do it. So intense ups and downs, but like crazy revelations and fun, and yeah, very hard work, but so worth it in the grand scheme of life.
Amazing. Well, I think that would be a good moment for you to tell us a bit more about your work and perhaps show us some of your work if you're happy with that, and talk a bit about your career and what it is that you do. That'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
So whilst Catherine's just sharing her screen, like if you do have any questions, do pop them in the chat. We've also got lots of sessions later in the week as well across all sorts of subjects. So I will be posting the link to join, to register for those in the chat later on. We've got lots of great sessions. We've got graphic design later on today, for example.
Can you see that? Is that all?
Can indeed, yeah, looking beautiful.
So I thought I'd just show you my brand deck, which my agent made, and I'll probably speak to you a bit more about the agency that I belong to in a bit. But this is what we show clients and prospective clients, just because it kind of showcases the best bits of my work. So I thought it'd be good to show you. So although I was saying about how I work with scraper board, after this I'll sort of show you I have actually very recently moved on to start doing it digitally, as things are nature of how the world is now. But I actually use Procreate for everything now. But this was made and I'm still using scraper board. So it's just a bit about me there. So this is about my original process, and you can see on the left there, that's the original scraper board image, and then everything is scanned in and coloured digitally, and I'll show you a bit more about the process as well. But this is mostly about who I've worked with. So here's just a list of some of my clients, and then some of bestsellers. So I mostly I mostly make patterns now, and I kind of naturally fell into pattern design. I'd always loved kind of arts and crafts, William Morris, anything decorative. So it naturally evolved like that. And I was mainly just doing kind of fairs and markets, like for customers, not for other businesses, and selling prints on Etsy and just selling cards. And then I basically caught the attention. So I was working in a like a gift shop. This was a couple of years after I had graduated, and a brand rep, sales rep for one of my clients saw my work, and he introduced me to my agent. So basically I sort of rent out my images to clients. So this is at the top of my sort of client list on my brand deck, because it's basically the most impressive and clients love it. They love to see it. But this was actually from a competition. It was, you might have already heard of the Liberty Open Call. So Liberty in London put out an open call, their first digital one. So historically, I think it's for the past like 20 years, makers you can line up and show your work to a panel at Liberty, and they will sell your wares if they like them. But they did a digital call for a pattern design for their fabric. So I was one of the 4 winners for that, and so ultimately it was a license because they paid me for the pattern, and we can talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, can I just ask, like, because one of the things that we do at ARU is, you know, as well as live briefs and things like that, we do encourage students to enter competitions. I'm just wondering how instrumental you think this was in your success. Do you think this was like a pivotal moment, or do you think you would be where you were without it?
I do think it really helped, and only in the way that what I've learned is the kind of prestige of having names like this behind you. Yeah. So, you know, we had clients that we'd meet with, or my agent would meet with before, and then after, you know, they wouldn't be interested in my work, and then after I won this, they'd see that, you know, that logo, and have a completely different opinion on my portfolio. So it does, you know, it does. It's definitely worth doing it, yeah. And I think competitions are really good, and you know, it really did feel like winning the lottery with this, to be honest, because it was just, you know, there were so many entries, and I didn't even think of how they even going to see my entry, because all you did was put a hashtag on an Instagram post. But definitely go for it. Anything like that, just go for it. Yeah, absolutely. But then, you know, similarly, anthropology, really great to work with, and again, clients loved that, and that was a really nice project. But I actually lost money on this because it's another reality of working for a massive company like that. It looks great. I love to have the logo. I can use the logo, you know, I've seen in anthropology, but this was actually more of a marketing exercise rather than anything else. And Liberty were amazing, and they paid, you know, a fair sum, but ultimately the return on that has been because of sort of the exposure and again, like the prestige of that name. This is some other projects that I've done. So this is my small company. So it's basically just sort of renting out my images to other companies, and this is my best client, museums and galleries. They're publishers, and they sell all over the world. So I just received like a royalty from them. Same with Lagom. This is a stamp project. So it's a mixture with the licensing. I'll talk a bit about my brand in a second as well. With the licensing, it's a mixture of being commissioned. So this was a commission, but also just picking up images. So these tapestry kits, I'd already made these images, and then they rented them from me.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a mixture of commissions and just them renting existing artwork. So this is all existing artwork. This is another one of my best clients, and a good example of, they were really small and couldn't offer us like anything, but we liked the product, we went with it, and now they're getting quite big, and they're a really good royalty that comes in. So
when you we Catherine, is this like you and your agent? So your agent supports you in decision making around which opportunities are going to be good for your business.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, should I tell you just a bit about the whole agency?
Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful.
Because so when this rep saw my work, he showed it straight away to the client he works for, museums and galleries, and they said, we love it, but we ideally want to work with you only if you have an agent. It makes it so much easier for big clients like this. It's so much more streamlined, especially because it is very, I mean, I've had my agent since 2016, and I still can't get my head around some of the layers and all the legislation. It's very sort of complicated. So, you know, one image you can rent to them for a card, but you can rent it out for another product. So it's really sort of layered. So they suggested I get myself an agent. I'd never even heard of art licensing, had no idea what it was, but I just sort of went for it. And I found this Brighton-based agency, and I just emailed them, and I'd emailed a couple of people, and they were the only ones that got back to me. And you know, it's kind of nice they were local. My agent now, Jahan, who this is who has made this deck. She belonged to another one at this time, so this was her old agency that she ran with someone else. And she said at the time I was actually only working with just in black and white as the scraper board comes, and she said,
Okay.
we love your work, but it's just not commercial enough. You know, we need it to be in color. So that was a huge point in my career. So I was just working like this. Everything was just black and white.
Okay.
And I knew how to use Photoshop quite well, just from not so much. I mean, it's just I had always used it since a young age, more for kind of photos and that kind of thing. So I just started colouring it on Photoshop with a tablet.
And then were you happy with that choice?
Yes. So
because one of the things that I'm interested in exploring is like how much have you had to compromise kind of like artistically in order to be commercial?
Absolutely. So I think naturally, as going into that that industry of illustration, what I really liked about it was kind of being briefed, and of course you want your own like as much creative freedom as possible, but at the same time I did like having direction. And when they suggested that, I initially was like, oh, I couldn't even imagine what it would look like coloured. And I thought, oh, am I just gonna be a sellout and just do stuff for whoever? But it was actually funny. When I had spoken to this the sales rep, he said, they do work with some independent artists who are real kind of divas about what you do with their work and how it's. And actually, what I love about licensing is most of the time, it's like 9 times out of 10, these are, art directors who know exactly what sells, and they make your products, your designs into these amazing products. And I love it. No one's ever really like offended me with what they've done with my work. So I'm always quite open. I am very open to changing and adapting to what would be most commercial, because at the end of the day, I do want to make a living. So I had to go at colouring, and I was really surprised. In fact, the very first image I coloured is here. It's sorry, we've passed it. This one. So the spring hare. I'd already done him in black and white. Obviously that's just in tapestry form now. So I did the colour version, and I got back to the agency and they were really impressed and they loved it, and they decided to take me on. So I think that was definitely a big
so that hare's quite special then.
Yeah, absolutely, he is. And I really, really loved, like, my final major project at ARU was Hares. It was a book about hares by the moon, and I've got lots and lots of hares, which are very, very commercial, and people love them. People love them as cards and prints. And this project was really good. Was really successful. So I belonged to the agency, and it's basically kind of 2 columns, my career. And it is difficult to, as an illustrator, depending on what you're doing, work can be very erratic, and having a stable income is, lots of people have day jobs, different jobs, but what I've kind of managed to do is have the licensing, and then I get royalties from that every quarter. So that's like a nice little ticking over income. But then I've also got my brand. So I design and have these products made. My most popular product is wallpaper, and I use a London-based printers workshop. Everything's made to order. It is a high price point because it's made to order and it's made in London, and it's all very luxurious and super high quality. But I have very thankfully managed to kind of establish myself as like a designer wallpaper, and people are willing to pay for the roles. And it's like anything, you can go to Dunelm, you can go to even like Asda Home now have these amazing decor and homewares, but with an independent artist like myself, it's selling, it's having art in your home. And so that's kind of my brand. That's how it is. People see that it's me making my work and making these really high quality products.
So at what point did you decide to launch your own brand? How did that happen? And
So,
you know, did you have any advice on that? And
oh, it was a huge, like, years of kind of a big learning curve. When I graduated in 2013, I was already selling prints. I remember in my uni room in my third year packing up and selling prints on Etsy. So I was just selling on Etsy, you know, very small scale, printing prints myself and using the uni, you know, the guys that printed there, and just like doing cards, small runs of cards and selling them. And then as I started doing things in person more, markets and fairs, it's funny because you do get so much feedback from people. So people would often say, have you tried wallpaper? Have you tried your designs on wallpaper? And I'm like, how the hell am I going to do that? You know,
yeah,
there's such a huge thought, but it very gradually. And again, I was so lucky because this job I had in like a gift store, lifestyle store, the owners loved my work and they really encouraged, and they had quite a lot of knowledge behind them. They were trying to make the shop its own brand. So it was trial and error, just finding different printers and having unsuccessful, successful things made and selling them. And it was probably 2016, so three years after I'd graduated, I properly, you know, made my own website, decided I wanted to do homewares specifically, so cushions, wallpaper, and again, lots of trial and error, lots of things that weren't working, but the company went limited only in 2020, so it kind of took off quite a lot. The Liberty competition, it did really put me on the map, and my social media kind of blew up, and it was like that was 2018, the Liberty competition. So it kind of was a few years of hard graft, kind of getting it to where it was, working day jobs in the meantime,
yeah.
and then it suddenly being like a, you know, full-time job. Yeah, so it was like that with the brand.
So, other than your agent, do you have anyone working with you? Because obviously you mentioned your website. Obviously, you're very active on Instagram as well. So, do you do all your own marketing, or?
I have I used to have actually an amazing PR, a couple of ladies that did my PR, but I only use them seasonally now. So again, that's all kind of trial and error. So I use them around Christmas, but I do mostly everything myself. I have the odd person help me pack orders and things, but I've actually moved on to drop shipping. So there's a lot I can do without having to do a lot of legwork. So my workshop, you know, it's all linked up. So someone buys something, it gets made, it gets sent to the customer. So that's kind of how the branding works. The most work for me is looking after people and doing the social media. And I'm kind of at that pivot. I'm at that point where I could get someone to help me with kind of customer service, but it's very much my baby still, and
Yeah.
I do everything, and I wouldn't condone my lifestyle because it is crazy, and I am constantly working. But I think it's still fairly young, especially in the eyes of it being a limited business. You know, it's not even 2 years old yet, so it's still technically a startup. So things like that are on the horizon, and expanding to, you know, sell it wholesale and in bulk. But I actually really like it how it is right now. And I think there's a lot of pressure to expand in general, and everybody thinks, like, you know, you need to be selling to all these big shops to make loads of money. But like I was saying about anthropology, it's actually a lot more work and not a lot of money, and I kind of like how, you know, comfortable and how much I can have a grasp on it at the moment.
Is there anything else on the deck that you'd like to show us?
I'll whiz through this. So these are just some of my products. I've got some accessories as well. Face masks were big, they were good. I was very fortunate that COVID kind of helped my business because people loved the face masks. And then there's just a bit about press here. So I actually do this myself now. I've just sort of established enough contacts I can just kind of send things out. So yeah, so this is just our credit.
So when you say send stuff out, do you mean send them out directly to people working on the magazines?
Yes,
or
it's kind of a combination, yeah, of people working for the magazines. I also use Pressloft, which is you pay. It's quite expensive, but it's definitely worth it. You have a bank of images and journalists can pick them, but also people do just get in touch and ask for images and info. So it's a good one for that.
Sounds like, you know, building up kind of networks and kind of personal contacts is kind of key, really.
Oh, absolutely, and it did. It's taken time, and it's one of the things I'd be, if I went back 3 years ago, even just 3 years ago, and told myself about that kind of thing, it would be frustrating. But actually, it's sometimes it's the only way to do it. And lots of kind of nice organic meetings of people like that we've just kind of happened to communicate, and it's been really good. Or, you know, been introduced through other peers and clients and things. So it's all about that networking and getting to know people. I'll come out of that now.
So that's interesting. So one of my questions is about if you could do something differently. You know, you mentioned going back, you know, talking to your younger self and saying, you know, get out there and network. Is there anything looking back that you would do differently if you had the opportunity to do it again?
So I think that only in terms of putting a lot of pressure on myself. Like I have always inherently, something definitely clicked, and especially when I found that way of working at uni and I became really super driven. Like I was never really that driven at school, and I was more interested in, you know, having a good time. And at uni, my second year was super social, and I kind of really knuckled down in third year thinking I need to make the most of it while I'm here. But I was so focused, especially when I kind of got signed to this agency and thought I could really make a go of this. And it's difficult because I was working in the mornings before work. I'd come home, finish at 5, have a nap, work into the night. And I think I would say to actually go easier on it. Because some of the things that happened, it's really difficult. It's definitely a balance, but honestly, I think that's the only thing going back, and maybe just being a bit having more confidence. But being young in your 20s, I'm 31 this year, and I feel like it's taken me a long time to kind of gain that self-confidence. You know, pricing yourself, putting yourself out there, it's so, and it's, I remember we laughed about it on our course, the illustration course. Like we'd always say, people that do illustration are quite often shy people who, you know, keep to themselves, and it has taken a long time to build up that confidence. So yeah, it was a lot of graft and kind of really going for it. And it doesn't need to be like that, I don't think. I think you can, you know, still it's certain things like, yeah, maybe I should have gotten out there more physically rather than like hiding in my bedroom working. Because I've experienced, especially like with the Liberty thing, sort of networking, going up to London, meeting, even just hanging out with I've met so many people, even on Instagram, you know, that do what I do, and we've shared so much with each other. So I think it's that balance of you know, working super hard but getting out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, the advice that you can get from other creatives, just like the advice and, you know, your experience that you're sharing with us today is really crucial. I mean, I'm sure much of it is new to people listening, so it's just really good to kind of connect and share some of that. So what would you say the best bits and the worst bits of your job are?
Well, I love the autonomy. I love being able to choose my own working hours, and I've always struggled working for someone else, and I've always kind of tried to like wangle it to what I want it to be, which had its pros and cons, especially for the people that I worked for. But so I really like working myself, and I've always been quite independent, self-sufficient in the way I don't really need to work for other people. I know lots of people need to be in like a communal studio space, but Is that okay? Is it the volume playing up?
No, your screen just froze very
Oh, no, is
slightly.
it back
But
now?
that's fine. Yeah, we've got you back.
Yeah, I really, like working by myself, and I'm lucky I've got this. My studio is just in our home, so I love that, and just love being able to choose my working hours and doing what I love. Like sometimes if I feel stressed, I literally think I'm drawing a dog for my job. This is great. Like I love it. I love my job, but the tough bits are you never switch off. I'm never. Like I'm getting married in May, and I'm gonna have to take a whole week off. I have never put on an out of office reply on my email ever. So it's something that, and again, I remember when I was at uni, Chris would say the nature of being an illustrator, you might get an amazing job come through, and you just have to cancel your weekend away. And I was thinking like, I'm never gonna do that. But it is a bit like that. Although my long suffering fiance is we've been together for 8 years. He's very used to it, but we've never been away and I haven't taken work. So that's probably, and that's a personal choice. Of course, I know lots of other artists, illustrators who have a much better way of, switching off and don't let that put you off. It doesn't need to be like that. But I do think that the way that my business has kind of escalated and grown is because I'm like constantly doing things and invested in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that it's a passion, and if you're passionate about something, how do you kind of switch off from it? Actually, if that's what you enjoy and what you love, then. And also, I think as well for everyone, the kind of work-life balance has got a bit more blurred during COVID because we're all kind of working more flexibly and all the rest of it. So maybe the rest of the world is kind of joining you with those sort of, blurred lines a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you any thoughts on like the future in terms of what how your industry in particular working in illustration might change moving forward?
So because it's got these two columns that run alongside each other, I've got the licensing, which is very much being commissioned, making the artwork. It's not about anything more than that. I'm just purely making the artwork. But then I've got the brand, which is more product. I'm concentrating on the products. The two, I think, I have more faith in the licensing side, the illustration side, because I think there will always be, the clients that I make relationships with and the new clients, they will always need artwork. No one's ever going to not want artwork in their lives, whether it's products or original artwork. So I think that's a very solid, if you think about how everything's changed, how everything's gone digital, greetings cards, still huge industry, and it's like analog, you think, but actually it's just massive. So I have a lot of faith in that industry inside. I love my brand so much, but it's something that for me, it's become a lot more competitive, even in recent years with COVID. So many people opening their own businesses, which is amazing. And like I think people don't realize a lot of people kind of thrown into that with COVID, either losing their jobs or not being able to work. And it's scary, but actually it's kind of forced a lot of people to take that leap. It's become way more competitive, and things like Brexit, COVID, even getting materials, getting things made, it's changed massively. There is a demand there for me to kind of scale up and start selling in bulk to companies, but it's kind of like it's just so competitive and it takes so much. You just need to inject so much money into it, and that whole kind of thing for me. I really like where it is and like making, but I'm very much interested more in pursuing my my roots of being an illustrator, and I even see one day maybe like the brand is looked after by someone else, but I'm still making the work. So yeah, in terms of the future, I think that the licensing is where it's at, and it hasn't of course products and the way you work changes, but producing illustration for clients, like that's something that I think it's just going to be around forever. So
do you think having those kind of two different aspects, do you think that kind of mitigates some of the risk a little bit for you? It's kind of like you haven't got all your eggs in one basket.
Definitely. And I would say that as well, because I know that and most of the other artists on my agency with Jahan, they just, they'll be producing work like that, and they either only need to work kind of, everyone's situation is different, or they have a day job, but I've kind of made it so it balances it out, so I don't have to worry too much in terms of my income, even though it's still pretty erratic. The brand works a certain way throughout the year, seasonally, and I've got that kind of hopefully down to a T. I mean, it fluctuates so much, but the licensing is quite stable, because I've got a good bank of clients, and it all kind of adds up. The royalties is like a nice little, it comes in every quarter. So yeah, I would say that having those two different and trying to do all different types of forms of revenue, you have to kind of go for it. I think even if you're an illustrator, maybe selling your work in person as well. Like there's I think that's the way to do it for sure.
Would you still do those sort of fairs and markets and things? I know you haven't been doing them probably because of COVID, but
no, I do hate them because I'm really shy. I'm not shy, but I just hate talking about. And this is why having an agent is so good, because she makes sure I get the right payment, right price for everything. But I find it really difficult to sit there and sell myself like it. And I could could sort of I have had other people help me, but yeah, it's not my favorite thing.
Do you ever illustrate just for pleasure, or does everything always turn into work?
Yeah, it's difficult, and I have kind of more personal, like, passion projects, but often they will be commercial enough to use. But it's quite nice when we have I'll go up and see my agent every now and again in Brighton, and we'll sit down, and she'll ask what I'm, we'll talk about what I need to work on and what clients want, but also what I've been thinking of. And I have a couple of just like projects, patterns that I want to make for fun, but they fall by the wayside quite a lot because of work. But they're kind of there, and it's nice to have that. If I don't feel like doing something with any pressure riding on it, it's quite nice to just do that. But it is definitely it's like a compulsion drawing. Like if I didn't, I'd feel weird.
Interesting. So I'm just coming to our final question now. So if anyone there has got a question for Catherine, please do pop it in the chat, and I will come to that. But you mentioned what advice you'd give to yourself if you could go back in time. But what advice would you, and that was quite specific to you, what advice would you give to anyone who wanted to break into the industry?
I think it is just kind of putting those feelers out and having that kind of balance of the discipline of honing your craft and really making the most of your passion, but also not being afraid to speak to other people and reach out. And like you say, like, you'll be surprised how much people want to share. And I do get lots of people approaching me and asking me. Of course, it's difficult if someone's like, where did you get this made? And I'm like, oh. But actually, a lot of people say, I'm starting out, and I've reached out to other people who don't want to know, and but I think that especially as a lot of women in this industry, and I do really feel like it's nice to have that community and stick together. And so I'm always talking to other peers and people that are doing similar things, and it's just so nice. It's just the best feeling when we're helping each other, and it doesn't need to be competitive, because I do think there is, although lots more people are doing it, I think if you stand out enough, then you don't have to worry. So it's that balance. I would say it's you got to go for it. Don't kill yourself doing it. Don't do what I did and never sleep. But also time, be kind to yourself about it. Give yourself space and time, but make sure you do get out there. And I know it's different now. It's been weird the past few years. It's like, what even is the like networking event I last went to in London? I can't imagine that really. It's kind of getting there, going back to normal. But I would say don't be afraid to get out there for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because quite often people sort of ask me, like, or challenge me with how essential going to uni is in terms of kind of creative careers. And a couple of things that, like you mentioned, quite simply about confidence. You know, one of the things about university is that, like, it opens your mind to a lot of different things and lots of different types of people, and kind of really, I think, helps people kind of come out of their shell a little bit. But also, you mentioned when we were chatting earlier, quite specifically about signature. You know, you said that a few times, and it's kind of quite a specific word about finding your signature. And I just think that ability to kind of, you know, explore and experiment that university gives you, you know, helps you discover that in a way that perhaps if you were starting off not in that environment and obviously trying to support yourself as well would just be really challenging.
Yeah, I sort of feel like I saw my course as a bit of an incubator, like, and you're all in like a nice little nest. You're looked after in terms of you've got your accommodation, you're with like-minded people, you're in this bubble of, and I would say as well, like, I wish I kind of you're there and you're like, I've got 3 years, it's great, but it is so fleeting, and you can make so much use of it, and like the facilities, and even the student space. I went back to the art school the past couple of years, I think just before COVID kicked off, and it's just amazing. It's like, if I could have that now, it would, know. But so I think, although it's not, I never, and quite often again people ask me, do you think I need to go to uni? I don't think absolutely you have to, but it definitely is like a springboard that, if I think you'd make life, if you can go to uni, I think you'd make life a lot harder for yourself if you didn't go and you tried to get into the industry. There's so much to learn, and from people who have, experts who know the industry and know what it's about. You just, you need that, sure.
A lot of people mention the facilities too. They sort of say, like, like, just maximize that opportunity in that time, because you'll never have that access to so many amazing facilities again.
Yeah, I wish I could do it again now, honestly.
Cool. So we've got some questions in the chat. We've got a question here from Laura. She says about how does the legal side of the business work, being self-employed? So I guess she's talking about the setup that you have.
Yeah, so it's, again, so much to learn, and it kind of is through like trial and error, and there's loads of layers for it. But for example, when you're self-employed, everything's kind of on you. Everything's like, if you need to borrow money, whatever, it's a personal loan at the end of the day. But now that I'm a limited company, that changes quite a lot, because I'm technically although I'm the director, I'm kind of an employee as well. So the company is like a bit of a, it's like a separate entity. So even though I'm quite new still, as in a new business, that kind of has affected the legal stuff a bit. But that has its pros and cons as well. And also with legal stuff, having an agent's amazing, because I've had people copy my work before, and then she's like thrown out she's a mate, she's just like on it and so used to it. She was an artist, she is an artist, but she worked as an illustrator before, so that protection's really good. But yeah, it's quite broad. I think, like, there's lots of different things with like legislation, and like taking commissions. I have terms and conditions I have to make people read, so they don't, they have to pay a certain amount up front, and if they cancel, this and that happens. So there is lots of that but there's loads of good resources. The AOI, the Association of Illustrators, and if you do the course at ARU, I think you get some kind of, or maybe I did, they help you with getting membership or something, but it's not expensive, and there's loads of resources on there. So lots of
good competitions as well. So in terms of establishing yourself, we've had lots of students who've won World Illustration Awards through the AOI.
Yeah,
and that's a really good way of getting yourself noticed.
Definitely.
But also, for example, at ARU, there's plenty of business startup advice there for you to look into, and they'll kind of help you and ensure that you understand everything about how to set yourself up as self-employed and things as well. So there is loads of advice out there. Kaylee would like to know, I don't know if this is irrelevant to you, Catherine, but how you deal with art block if it's for a project for work. Do you ever you've got a commission and you're like, I have no idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's something kind of smoothed out. For being used to being commissioned, it gets easier, I think, the way you start working. But of course, it happens, and sometimes, like with anything, I do feel a bit burned out, and I don't feel like drawing if I have been working really hard, especially if I have sometimes it's hard to say no to something with a tight deadline. If it's, you know, it's paid well and it's something I want to do, I'll go for it. But and I talk about this a lot. I've given a talk before at the illustration course, but I remember Jim, one of the tutors, saying, like, you just cannot fake it. Everyone knows if you've done something, like, it's just something that you can't. So it's sort of like you have to throw yourself into it. And I feel like I have quite a set way of sort of dealing with it slash when I start a project. So I trawl through things. I trawl through reference, basically. I've got loads of books, but it is more Pinterest now. It's really boring, sorry, but it is Pinterest. But I just need the injection of like inspiration. You can see my studio is like full of all different kinds of things, and especially now COVID's over. I mean, I really just struggle not being able to go out, but going to galleries and just going out anywhere. If I'm really blocked, it's learning to step away and just go and do something, and you'll be so surprised the way it comes to you. And also I nap a lot, I sleep a lot, I'm like a cat, and I often find that helps. And when I get stressed, I need to have a nap, and it's really funny. I can just I'll wake up and I'll like have an idea and refresh.
Perfect. So someone else, I think from Chelmsford College, sorry, I can't see your name, just a number, but a similar question about any advice for keeping motivated, which I think you probably just covered, but also what inspired your designs? So you've talked about nature and, you know, they're very sort of like animal and nature focused. Was there a specific inspiration for that, do you think?
I don't know why, but I've just always had a natural sort of ability to start, like, it comes very naturally to me drawing animals, but also I think because I've drawn them so much and over again, I kind of have a general understanding of like their anatomy, and same with plants and things. I'm doing more humans recently because I'm trying to do a bit more editorial work, which you know, demands for a bit more of that kind of thing, like everyday life. But I think it's kind of, so practicing and just keep going and drawing loads and drawing whenever you can to keep it going. And yeah, inspiration wise, there's just so much. Like it's very, I like to think, and I like the thought of my work being hard to place in time. So I do like kind of very classic traditional work and Victorian. Like my favorite museum is the V&A, and the even looking at sculptures and stuff in all of their all the free collections there, like it's just like endless inspiration. And yeah there's so much around, with especially if you're in Cambridge. You just pop into London. And
well, I mean, Cambridge is great. There are lots of different museums, Kettle's Yard,
the museums there,
contemporary art galleries, there's loads, as well as like loads of outdoor stuff as well. People say like just the Botanic Gardens, they can find really inspirational, loads of different like textures and stuff.
Absolutely.
So there's Museum of Zoology if you want to look at anatomy.
Yeah, that museum, is it the Museum of what's it called? So I'm beginning of, is it B? It's like opposite where John Lewis probably still is, and you go through and there's like I think it's a zoology, and there's an anthropology museum as well.
Yes,
I went when I was in Cambridge there. Yeah, they're amazing.
So we've got a few more questions and just a few minutes left, which is great. But just going back up to Astrid's question, she said, how did you initially get the foot traffic for your work? How did you get so popular that people wanted to buy your work, and when and how did that happen?
So I think that social media is so tricky because it's huge, it's so competitive. But actually, I think a few smart moves was using influencers, so gifting my products to influencers. And there's one lady who because probably my most popular design, I have got some things here I was going to show you. So this wallpaper, and really unexpected, but because I did this design years ago, but this is my most popular wallpaper at the moment. And there's one lady, an influencer, who has this wallpaper in her bathroom, and also one of my shower curtains with mermaids on. And every time she posts it, it's incredible, and like the sales will come through, and I can usually tell where it's come from, so it'll say it's come from Instagram and that kind of thing. So social media, the tool, it's an amazing tool, and if you please the algorithm, so if you're getting seen better by doing what it wants, like you can literally look up what the algorithm wants. There are lots of articles and things. So that was a smart move, I think. And I've got a few different influencers I work with, but don't think you have to pay. Some people want like thousands of pounds, but I'll only ever just trade my product for their photos.
And it's genuine, isn't it? And if that's how it works, it has to be, as like Jim said, it has to be kind of genuine, really.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
perfect.
Yeah.
So a question here about confidence, or confidence in yourself as a designer. How did you come out of yourself more, instead of shying away from showing your art to the people around you and keeping it to yourself?
It's so hard, because I do think, annoyingly, so unhelpful, but I do think it comes of age a little bit. Like I was very, very anxious, shy teenager, and then I kind of came out of my shell at uni because I was surrounded by these people that I felt understood me, and I was going on like nights out, and you just get more confident about yourself. And I think that self-development is integral to how you feel about your own work. But the self-deprecation element of it, like I pushed myself so hard, and I was like so hard on myself. And I just think, like, give yourself some space and praise, and try and be good to yourself, try and treat yourself like you would a friend, and understand, like, when I think about being like, oh, I don't think that client would want my work or whatever. I think if I had a friend who's doing what I do, I'd be like, oh my God, you absolutely, you can do that. They're going to love it. So I think it's just getting out of your head a bit and being kind to yourself. Yeah.
Do you think as well, because like on the illustration course you do crits, don't you, where you share and talk about your work, and it's kind of like, I always think, oh, that must put people slightly out of their comfort zone. They have to share their work and they have to take feedback on it. So I would imagine that'd be quite helpful if you are sort of a bit shy about discussing your work.
Definitely, yeah. I've got friends that I made on our course, and we have said before, we're like, oh, I miss crits. I wish we still had crits, because it's really difficult. Like I'm like shoving things in my fiance's face, like, how do you feel about this? Because you get so in your own head about stuff, and
yeah,
it's there. Yeah, the crits are amazing, and although kind of terrifying, especially if you don't feel confident, even just the feedback, like showing it to a fresh pair of eyes and to like a professional pair of eyes. Even now, I'll do some work, show it to a client, and they're like, it's amazing, but what is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, like it's yeah, that's definitely a really good way of doing it.
Well, thank you. Andrea, you've got a question, which I think is probably for me, about digital illustrator and games art. I mean, all I would say is look into all different types of courses and see which one you think is right for you. You might want to come to our Creative Careers session on Friday afternoon, which is Emily Pritchard, who is talking about computer games art. We've got a few courses at ARU which look at the kind of games art specifically. So you're absolutely doing the right thing by attending this session. I would say, like, go to as many sessions as you can, look into individual courses, do your research, and find out what best suits where you want to go. It's amazing that you know what you want to do. I'm just going to ask this final question before we wrap up, Catherine. Do you ever use some of your older work to inspire you, and how do you combine that with newer work? And have you ever used older work and created something new from it? That's a good question.
That's a really good question, because again, on my course, I remember Chris being like, never throw away any of your sketchbooks. And I used to be really critical, like tearing pages out. But now I keep absolutely everything. And yeah, definitely. So sometimes clients have come forward and said, I want this, and I've actually worked on that before, or people like looking at, I don't do it so much anymore because we have like the brand deck, but I have a huge bank of images now. Like those hairs I showed at the beginning are very old, and you can probably tell they're quite a different style, but they can then inspire sort of new works, or I adapt them or take elements and use them in new work. I actually have this one client. It's a Japanese lady that has a fabric company, and I create designs for her, and she has the most wild imagination, and she literally sends me like 5 different designs and says, can you do this with this and this? And I'm like, what? And then I do it, and it's amazing. So yeah, absolutely, I use older work as inspiration, and yeah, never throw any of your sketchbooks away. I've got a huge pile of them.
That's good advice, and I think we'll end on that note, Catherine. Thank you very much for joining us. I found that really interesting. I hope everyone else did as well. If you wouldn't mind, please, I have posted a feedback form in the chat. I will email it around, but I'd be very grateful if you would take a few minutes just to fill out the feedback form. That helps us moving forward to be able to run these events again in the future, which I hope you find useful. And also, if you want to book onto another one of the sessions later in the week, I've also posted the booking link there as well, but I will send you all an email. Lots of lovely comments there, Catherine. I think you might be able to see those saying thank you very much. It's really helpful. We've been extremely inspiring. Thank you all for coming, and really great to chat to you again, Catherine. It's always fascinating to hear about your journey.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, if anyone, I mean, if you, my Instagram handle is just Catherine Rowe Designs. If anybody wants to reach out, obviously would be happy to help. So yeah.
Really kind. Thank you. Great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.